The ring box felt like a brick in my cargo shorts pocket as I flipped burgers at the Sunset Pool Club's annual barbecue. Sweat dripped down my forehead in the blazing August heat, mixing anticipation with nervous energy. After 2 years with Jessica, I was finally ready to make it official. The diamond had cost me 3 months of profits from my used car lot, but she was worth it. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Danny, honey, could you grab me another mojito?" Jessica called from the pool, her voice carrying that sweet tone she used when other people were watching. She floated on a pink flamingo raft, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite being in the water for an hour. "Sure thing, babe," I called back, setting down my spatula. The other club members lounged around the pool deck, sipping cocktails and gossiping about whose kids got into which colleges. This wasn't my usual crowd. I was more comfortable at Eddie's boxing gym than sipping overpriced drinks with lawyers and real estate agents. But Jessica loved this scene. As I walked toward the bar, I heard Jessica's laugh ring out across the pool area. That musical giggle that had first caught my attention at Murphy's Tavern 2 years ago. But something in her tone made me pause. "Oh my God, you should have seen my ex's body back in college," she was saying, loud enough for half the pool to hear. Now that was a man. Those abs, those shoulders. I could barely wrap my arms around his chest. The mojito glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the concrete. Ice cubes scattered across the hot pavement as conversations around the pool stuttered to a halt. I stood there like an idiot, ring box burning a hole in my pocket, while my girlfriend of 2 years publicly fantasized about another man's physique. Jessica didn't even notice the broken glass or the sudden silence. She was too busy making eyes at Chad Brennan, her college ex-boyfriend who'd recently moved back to town. Chad lounged on a pool chair like some kind of fitness model, his spray-tanned abs glistening with coconut oil. The guy looked like he'd stepped out of a protein powder advertisement. "Jessica," I called out, my voice tighter than I intended. "Can I talk to you for a second?" She finally looked in my direction, her blue eyes slightly unfocused from the alcohol. "In a minute, Danny. Chad was just telling me about his new fitness influencer business. Isn't that exciting?" Chad flashed me a smug grin that made my fists clench. "Hey there, Dan. Great burgers, man. Really us. Filling." The way he said it made it sound like an insult. "It's Danny," I corrected, but he'd already turned back to Jessica. I watched in growing disbelief as my girlfriend swam over to Chad's chair, placing her manicured hands on his knee as she pulled herself halfway out of the water. Her red bikini left little to the imagination, and Chad's eyes roamed appreciatively over her body. "Tell me more about those fitness competitions," she purred, completely ignoring the fact that I was standing 10 feet away with a ring box in my pocket. Mrs. Kravitz, our 70-year-old neighbor, shuffled over and patted my arm sympathetically. "Men like that are all flash and no substance, dear. Don't you worry." But I was worried, and humiliated, and getting angrier by the second. The afternoon dragged on with Jessica hanging all over Chad, laughing at his stories about protein shakes and photo shoots. Every few minutes she'd make another comment about his amazing transformation or his dedication to fitness. Meanwhile, I stood by the grill like a short-order cook, watching my relationship implode in real time. Our 15-year-old daughter Ava sprawled on a lounge chair nearby, scrolling through her phone with the practiced indifference of a teenager. But I caught her rolling her eyes every time Jessica giggled at one of Chad's jokes. "This is embarrassing," Ava muttered under her breath, not looking up from her screen. "Tell me about it," I replied, flipping a burger with more force than necessary. As the sun began to set, the party started winding down. Jessica finally extracted herself from Chad's orbit long enough to help clean up, but she spent the entire time talking about him. "Did you know Chad has over 50,000 Instagram followers?" she gushed while stacking plastic cups. "He's basically famous, and he's thinking about starting a supplement line." "Fascinating," I said dryly, shoving leftover hamburger buns into a garbage bag. That night, after we'd gotten home and Ava had disappeared into her room, I found Jessica in our bedroom, scrolling through her phone with a dreamy expression. "Good party tonight," I said carefully, sitting on the edge of the bed. She murmured, not looking up from her screen. "Chad looked amazing, didn't he? I can't believe how much he's changed since college." The ring box felt like it weighed 50 pounds in my nightstand drawer. "Jessica, we need to talk." "In a minute, honey. I'm just checking out Chad's Instagram. Look at this photo from his trip to Miami." She held up her phone, showing me a shirtless picture of Chad posing on a yacht. That's when I saw it, the notification that popped up at the top of her screen. A text message from Chad that read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear that red dress." My blood turned to ice. "Jessica, what's that message about?" She quickly pulled the phone away, her cheeks flushing. "What message? I don't know what you're talking about." But I'd seen enough. The pieces were falling into place. The sudden interest in working late, the new clothes, the way she'd been distant for weeks. While I'd been planning a proposal, she'd been planning something else entirely. "Let me see your phone," I said quietly. "No, Danny, that's private." She clutched the device to her chest like a shield. "Private? We've been together for 2 years. We live together. We're raising a daughter together. What could be so private that you can't show me? It's just girl talk. You wouldn't understand." I stood up slowly, my hands shaking with rage and humiliation. Girl talk with Chad. Jessica's face went white. She'd been caught, and we both knew it. "Danny, I can explain." "No need," I said, walking toward the door. "I think I understand perfectly." As I left the room, I heard her calling after me, but I didn't stop. I walked out to my truck, sat in the driver's seat, and stared at the house I'd thought would become our home. Tomorrow, I decided, things were going to change. If Jessica wanted to play games, she'd learn that this blue-collar guy knew a few moves of his own. Nothing like being cucked before the burgers are even done. Cheers, universe. The next morning, I woke up on Eddie's couch at the boxing gym, my neck stiff and my mood fouler than week-old milk. Eddie Kowalski had been running this place for 30 years, training everyone from Golden Gloves hopefuls to guys like me who just needed somewhere to hit things legally. "You look like hell," Eddie said, handing me a cup of coffee that could strip paint. "Want to talk about it, or just hit the heavy bag until your knuckles bleed?" "Both," I muttered, taking a sip of the brutal coffee. "Jessica's been cheating on me with her ex. Caught them texting last night." Eddie nodded like he'd seen the story 1,000 times before. At 65, he probably had. "What are you going to do about it?" "I don't know yet, but something." "Well, whatever you're planning, make sure it's smart. Don't get mad. Make 'em pay. Start with their pride." I spent the morning working the heavy bag, trying to pound out my frustration. But every punch reminded me of Chad's smug face and Jessica's dreamy expression as she stared at his Instagram photos. Around noon, I drove to my used car lot to try to salvage what was left of the day. Danny's reliable rides wasn't much to look at. A small office, a chain-link fence, and about 30 vehicles in various states of repair, but it was mine. I'd built it from nothing after getting laid off from the factory 5 years ago. My assistant manager, Tony, was sitting in the office when I arrived, looking uncomfortable. "Boss, we need to talk," he said. "Mrs. Henderson called this morning. She's backing out of buying that Honda Civic." "What?" "She put down a deposit yesterday." Tony shifted in his chair. "She said she heard some rumors about your personal situation. Doesn't want to do business with someone who can't keep his own house in order?" My stomach dropped. "What rumors?" "Words getting around about Jessica and that Chad guy. You know how people talk in this town." I knew exactly how people talked. In a city of 50,000, gossip traveled faster than bad news, and apparently my humiliation at the pool club was already making the rounds. The rest of the day brought more of the same. 3 potential customers found excuses to leave without buying anything. My parts supplier mentioned hearing I might be going through some changes and wanted to discuss payment terms. Even the coffee shop girl gave me pitying looks when I stopped for lunch. By the time I got home that evening, I was ready to punch something harder than a heavy bag. Jessica's car was in the driveway, but she was nowhere to be found. Ava was in the kitchen, making a sandwich with the focused intensity that meant she was avoiding conversation. "Where's Jessica?" I asked. Ava shrugged without looking up. "Out with Leah. Something about needing girl time to process her feelings." Leah Morrison was Jessica's best friend since college, an artist who ran a small studio downtown. She'd always been supportive of our relationship, or so I'd thought. "Did she say anything else?" "Just that you guys had a fight, and she needed space to think." Ava finally looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Dad, are you and Jessica breaking up?" The question hit me like a sucker punch. Ava had been through enough upheaval when her mother and I divorced 3 years ago. The last thing she needed was more instability. "I don't know, kiddo. We're working through some stuff." "Is it because of that gross guy from the pool party? Because everyone's talking about it." "Everyone?" Ava held up her phone. "It's all over social media. Someone posted a video of Jessica hanging all over him. It's kind of gone viral in our school district." She showed me the screen, and my heart sank. There was Jessica, climbing out of the pool in slow motion, placing her hands on Chad's chest while he flexed for the camera. The caption read, "When your girl finds an upgrade, jar pool party drama, lorm awkward." The video had over 3,000 views and hundreds of comments, most of them mocking me or praising Chad's physique. "I'm sorry, Dad," Ava said quietly. "Kids at school are being jerks about it." That's when I realized this wasn't just about Jessica anymore. This was about my reputation, my business, my daughter's social life. Chad and Jessica had turned my private humiliation into public entertainment. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Staying at Leah's tonight. We need to talk tomorrow." I stared at the message, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. She wanted to talk? Fine. But first, I had some talking of my own to do. I spent the evening researching Chad's social media presence, learning everything I could about his fitness influencer business. Turns out, Mr. Perfect had some interesting secrets. His supplement endorsements weren't FDA approved, his natural transformation timeline didn't match up with his before and after photos, and his fancy sports car? Leased with payments 3 months behind, according to public records. By midnight, I had a plan forming. Eddie was right. I needed to be smart about this. If Jessica and Chad wanted to play in public, they'd learn that two could play that game. The next morning, I drove to the pool club for their weekly Wellness Wednesday event. Chad was there, naturally, leading an impromptu workout session for a group of admirers. Jessica sat poolside in a new bikini, watching him with obvious adoration. I waited until Chad finished his demonstration, then walked over with my most innocent smile. "Great workout, Chad," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Hey, Jessica mentioned you're starting a supplement line. That's exciting." Chad puffed up with pride. "Yeah, man. All natural products for maximum gains. I've got some samples in my car if you're interested." "Actually, I was curious about your transformation timeline. Jessica showed me some of your old photos, and the muscle gain is incredible. What's your secret?" The crowd leaned in, interested. Chad launched into his rehearsed speech about dedication and clean eating, but I was watching his body language carefully. The slight tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes flickered when he mentioned natural methods. "That's amazing," I said when he finished. "So you're saying you put on 40 pounds of muscle in 6 months naturally? That's like medically impossible, isn't it?" The crowd murmured uncertainly. Chad's face reddened slightly. "Well, I mean, with the right genetics and dedication—" "Oh, I'm not questioning your dedication," I interrupted smoothly. "I'm just wondering if your followers know about the other stuff. You know, the real methods behind those incredible results." "What are you talking about?" Jessica snapped, but I could see doubt creeping into her expression. I pulled out my phone and showed the screen to the crowd. "I did some research last night. Turns out Chad here has been pretty active on some bodybuilding forums, discussing his supplement regimen, the kind of supplements that aren't exactly legal without a prescription." Chad lunged for my phone, but I stepped back smoothly. Now. No need to get aggressive. I'm just sharing information with your fans." The crowd was buzzing now, phones coming out to record the confrontation. Chad's carefully constructed image was cracking in real time. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snarled. "Maybe not," I said with a shrug. "But I know what bankruptcy records look like, and I know what happens when the state investigates unlicensed supplement sales." Chad went white. Jessica stared at him with growing horror as the implications sank in. "Danny, stop," she whispered, but I was just getting started. "Oh, and Jessica, you might want to ask Chad about his girlfriend in Miami, the one from his yacht photos. I'm sure she'd love to meet you." The pool deck erupted in shocked whispers and frantic phone tapping as people looked up Chad's social media with new eyes. I could see his follower count dropping in real time as the truth spread. Chad stormed off, leaving Jessica sitting alone in her new bikini, suddenly looking very small and very exposed. I walked over to her chair and leaned down so only she could hear. "You wanted a villain, sweetheart? Congratulations, you just got one." Jessica didn't come home that night either, or the next. By Thursday morning, I'd moved all our joint savings into a new account. Under my name only, canceled her credit cards, and changed the locks on the house. If she wanted to play house with Chad, she could figure out how to pay for it herself. The first sign that my plan was working came when Tony called me at the lot, barely containing his laughter. "Boss, you need to see this," he said. "Chad's Instagram is blowing up, but not in a good way." I pulled up his profile on my phone and grinned. His follower count had dropped from 50,000 to 37,000 overnight. The comments on his recent posts were brutal. "How's that steroid cycle going?" And "Nice bankruptcy, bro," and "Which girlfriend are you cheating on today?" Better yet, several supplement companies had already posted statements distancing themselves from him. His carefully constructed influencer empire was crumbling faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. But I wasn't done yet. Around noon, Jessica's boss, Mr. Reynolds, called my office. We'd met a few times at company parties, and he'd always seemed like a decent guy. "Danny, I hope you don't mind me calling," he said. "I wanted to check on Jessica. She's missed 3 days of work this week, and when she did show up Tuesday, she seemed distracted." "Distracted how?" "Well, she spent most of the day on her phone, and she left early for a long lunch that turned into the rest of the afternoon. I tried calling yesterday, but it went straight to voicemail." I felt a cold smile spread across my face. I think Jessica might be going through some personal issues right now. She's been staying with friends while we work through some relationship problems. "I see. Well, I hope everything works out. She's a good paralegal when she's focused." "I'm sure she'll get her priorities straight soon," I said. "Thanks for calling, Mr. Reynolds." After hanging up, I sat back in my chair and considered my next move. Jessica had always been proud of her job at the law firm, constantly talking about how professional and respected she was. If she was jeopardizing that for Chad, she was even more far gone than I'd thought. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's at 7 Murphy's Tavern was where we'd first met 2 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I arrived at 7 sharp to find Jessica sitting in a corner booth, looking haggard and defeated. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. For someone who never left the house without full war paint, she looked surprisingly vulnerable. "Danny," she said as I slid into the booth across from her. "Thank you for coming." "This should be interesting," I replied, signaling the bartender for a beer. "I know you're angry." "Angry?" I interrupted. "Jessica, I'm way past angry. I'm in full villain mode now, remember?" She flinched at the reference to my parting comment at the pool. "I deserve that. I know I hurt you." "You didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me in front of half the town, destroyed my business reputation, and turned my daughter into a social media laughingstock. Hurt doesn't begin to cover it." Jessica stared down at her hands, twisting her engagement ring from her first marriage, the one she'd never quite gotten around to taking off. "I made a mistake." "Which mistake? Cheating on me or getting caught?" "All of it," she whispered. "Chad he's not who I thought he was." I leaned back in my chair, enjoying this more than I probably should have. "Really? The steroid-abusing, financially bankrupt serial cheater isn't living up to your expectations? I'm shocked." "You don't have to be cruel about it." "Actually, I think I do. See, Jessica, you spent 2 years with a guy who loved you, supported you, and was planning to propose to you, and you threw it all away for Instagram abs and a leased sports car. So yeah, I'm going to be a little cruel about it." Her eyes widened. "You were going to propose?" I pulled the ring box out of my jacket pocket and set it on the table between us. "Pool party. Right before you started gushing about your ex's body to anyone who'd listen." Jessica stared at the box like it might bite her. "Danny, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." "But it did happen, and now we both have to live with the consequences." "What do you mean?" I took a long sip of my beer, savoring the moment. "Well, let's see. Your boss called me today, wondering why you've been missing work. Apparently your performance has been slipping, and Chad's influencer career is pretty much over. Turns out people don't like being lied to about steroids and fake transformations." "You did that on purpose." I exposed the truth. If that destroyed his career, maybe he should have thought about that before he started sleeping with other men's girlfriends. Jessica's face crumpled. "He broke up with me yesterday. Said I was too much drama and he needed to focus on salvaging his brand." Despite everything, I felt a tiny flicker of sympathy for her. But then I remembered the video of her climbing out of the pool, the mocking comments about my body, the weeks of lies and deception. "That's rough," I said without much conviction. "I know I don't deserve it, but I was hoping maybe we could try to work things out. I made a horrible mistake, but what we had was real." I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse. What I saw was desperation, fear, and the dawning realization that her grass-is-greener fantasy had turned into a nightmare. "Here's the thing, Jessica. Even if I could forgive the cheating, and that's a big if, I can't forgive the humiliation. You didn't just cheat on me privately. You made me look like a fool in front of the entire town. I can make it up to you." "No," I said firmly. "You can't. Some things can't be fixed." I stood up, leaving the ring box on the table. "Keep that as a reminder of what you threw away. And Jessica, you might want to start looking for a new job. I have a feeling Mr. Reynolds isn't going to be very understanding about your recent performance issues. As I walked toward the door, I heard her calling my name, but I didn't turn around. I had one more stop to make tonight. Leah Morrison's art studio was in the trendy part of downtown, sandwiched between a craft brewery and a vintage clothing store. I'd always found her pretentious, the kind of person who talked about finding herself through artistic expression while living off her trust fund. But Jessica adored her. I knocked on the studio door, and Leah answered wearing paint-splattered overalls and a confused expression. "Danny, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk, Leah, about your role in all this." Her face went pale. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do. See, I've been thinking about the timeline here. Jessica's sudden interest in fitness, her new clothes, the way she knew exactly when and where to run into Chad at the pool club. That doesn't happen by accident." Leah stepped back, but I followed her into the studio. Canvases covered in abstract splatters lined the walls, the kind of art that looked like expensive accidents. "You set this whole thing up, didn't you?" I continued. "You've been feeding Jessica's dissatisfaction, encouraging her to reconnect with Chad, maybe even arranging those chance encounters." "That's ridiculous," Leah said, but her voice was shaking. "Is it? Because I remember now. You used to work for me, didn't you? 3 years ago, right after I opened the lot, and I fired you for stealing from the cash register." Leah's face went from pale to bright red. "You humiliated me. Accused me of stealing when I was just borrowing money for an emergency." "Borrowing? You took $300 without asking and lied about it when I confronted you." "I was going to pay it back." "Sure you were, just like you were going to tell Jessica what you were really doing when you encouraged her to cheat on me." Leah sank into a paint-stained chair, her defiance crumbling. "She was unhappy, Danny. She told me she felt trapped, like she was settling for less than she deserved." "So you decided to help her blow up our relationship as revenge for getting fired?" "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she whispered. "I just wanted you to feel as humiliated as you made me feel." I stared at her, feeling a mix of rage and disgust. "Congratulations, Leah. You got your revenge. You destroyed a 2-year relationship, hurt a 15-year-old girl, and ruined Jessica's life in the process. I hope it was worth it." "Danny, please." But I was already walking toward the door. I had what I needed now. The full picture of how my life had been systematically dismantled by 2 vindictive women and 1 narcissistic fitness influencer. Tomorrow, I decided, it was time for the final act of this little drama. And this time, I was going to make sure everyone got what they deserved. Friday morning, I sent out invitations for what I called a reconciliation dinner at my lakeside rental cabin. The cabin had been in my family for 20 years, a rustic retreat about an hour outside town where I went to fish and think. It seemed like the perfect place for what I had planned. I invited Jessica, Chad, Leah, Ava, and even Mrs. Kravitz, claiming I'd accidentally sent her the group text. In reality, I wanted witnesses for what was about to happen. The responses came back quickly. Jessica was eager to talk things through. Chad was reluctant, but agreed to come after I mentioned I had some business opportunities to discuss. Leah claimed she was too busy, but I convinced her that Jessica needed her support. Ava just rolled her eyes and asked if she had to come. "Trust me, kiddo," I told her. "You won't want to miss this." I spent Friday afternoon setting up the cabin, installing small wireless speakers in strategic locations, and connecting them to my phone. Eddie had helped me plan this part, drawing on his years of experience dealing with cheating spouses and deadbeat gym members. "The key is overwhelming them with evidence," he'd explained. "Don't give them time to make excuses or shift blame. Hit them with everything at once." Saturday evening arrived gray and drizzly. Perfect weather for what I had in mind. The guests arrived in separate cars, creating an awkward tension from the moment they walked through the door. Jessica came first, wearing a simple black dress and a nervous expression. She'd clearly spent time on her appearance, hoping to remind me of what I'd be giving up. Chad showed up 20 minutes late, driving his damaged sports car and wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He strutted into the cabin like he owned the place. Leah arrived looking uncomfortable, clutching a bottle of wine like a shield. She avoided eye contact with me, focusing instead on comforting Jessica. Ava came in last, earbuds in and attitude on full display. Mrs. Kravitz had declined at the last minute, claiming her arthritis was acting up, but that was fine. I had enough witnesses. "Thank you all for coming," I said, once everyone was seated around the cabin's rustic dining table. I thought it was time we cleared the air about recent events. "Danny," Jessica began, "I'm so glad you're ready to talk about this maturely." "Oh, we're definitely going to talk," I interrupted, pulling out my phone. "In fact, I think it's time everyone heard the whole truth about what's been going on. I pressed play on the first audio file, a recording of Jessica and Chad's phone conversation from 3 days ago, discussing their plans to sell some of my business assets to fund a trip to Miami. Jessica's face went white. "How did you get that?" "You left your phone unlocked at Murphy's," I said. "Sloppy operational security, but then again, you never were as smart as you thought you were." Chad jumped up from his chair. "This is illegal. You can't record people without their consent." "Actually, in this state, I can record any conversation I'm a party to. And since Jessica was discussing my business and my property, I'd say I was definitely a party to this conversation." I played the next clip, Leah talking to Jessica about how satisfying it was to watch me suffer, how I deserved everything I was getting after the way I'd treated her. Leah's face crumpled. "Danny, please..." "Please what? Please don't expose the fact that you orchestrated this entire thing as revenge for getting fired. Please don't tell Jessica that you were willing to destroy her life just to get back at me." Jessica turned to stare at her best friend in horror. "Leah, is that true?" "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Leah whispered. "What wasn't supposed to happen like this?" Jessica's voice was rising. "Did you set me up with Chad just to hurt Danny?" The cabin erupted in shouting as the truth finally came out. Jessica screamed at Leah for manipulating her. Chad yelled at everyone for dragging him into their drama. Leah sobbed and tried to explain her actions. Through it all, I sat calmly at the head of the table, watching 3 people who had tried to destroy me tear each other apart instead. "Are you enjoying this?" Ava asked quietly. She was the only one who hadn't joined the screaming match. "More than I probably should," I admitted. "Good," she said. "They deserve it." The fight reached a crescendo when Jessica lunged across the table at Leah, calling her a manipulative snake. Chad tried to intervene and got a wine glass thrown at his head for his trouble. In the chaos, I slipped outside and let the air out of Chad's tires, ensuring no one could leave until I was finished. When I came back inside, Chad was trying to restore order by physically separating Jessica and Leah. "Everyone needs to calm down," he was saying. "This isn't solving anything." "You're right," I said. "Let's solve something. Chad, you've been sleeping with my girlfriend and plotting to steal from my business. You've also been lying to thousands of social media followers about your steroid use. How do you think we should solve that?" Chad puffed up his chest, trying to look intimidating. "You want to take this outside, old man?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Old man? I'm 38, Chad, and unlike you, I didn't build my muscles with illegal chemicals." "Prove it," he snarled, gladly. What happened next wasn't really a fight. It was more like a physics demonstration. Chad was bigger and more muscled, but he was also slower and less experienced. I'd been boxing at Eddie's gym for 5 years, and all those hours on the heavy bag had taught me how to throw a punch that counted. We ended up wrestling in the mud outside the cabin, Chad's designer clothes getting destroyed as I systematically dismantled his pretty boy image. By the time we were done, he was covered in dirt, his shirt was torn, and his carefully styled hair looked like he'd been struck by lightning. "Had enough?" I asked, standing over him as he gasped for breath. "My tires," he wheezed, looking at his car. "What did you do to my tires?" "Gave you some time to think about your life choices," I replied. That's when we heard the sirens. Someone, probably a neighbor, had called the police about the noise. 2 officers arrived and found Chad muddy and disheveled, Jessica and Leah still screaming at each other, and me standing calmly on the porch like I was hosting a normal dinner party. "Evening, officers," I said politely. "Just a family dispute. No laws broken, just some relationship drama that got a little heated." The senior officer looked around at the chaos and sighed. "Sir, we got reports of fighting and shouting. What's the situation here?" "My girlfriend cheated on me with this gentleman," I explained, gesturing to Chad. "Her best friend orchestrated the whole thing as revenge for an old grudge. We were trying to talk things through, but emotions got a little high." "Anyone want to press charges?" the officer asked. Chad looked like he wanted to, but I'd been careful not to do anything technically illegal. The wrestling match had been mutual combat. The tire deflation was just mischief, and the recordings were perfectly legal. "No charges," Jessica said quietly. "We just need to work through some personal issues." After the police left, the group began to disperse. Chad called a tow truck for his car, muttering about lawsuits and revenge. Leah slunk away into the night, her friendship with Jessica clearly over. Jessica lingered, trying one last time to salvage something from the wreckage. "Danny, I know this looks bad, but maybe we can still..." "Still what?" I asked. "Still pretend this didn't happen? Still act like you didn't throw away 2 years for a guy who dumped you the minute things got complicated?" She had no answer for that. Go home, Jessica. Find somewhere else to live, find a new job if you still have one, and find someone who doesn't know what you're capable of. As she walked to her car, shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, but emptiness. The revenge had been everything I'd planned, but it didn't fill the hole she'd left in my life. Ava appeared beside me on the porch. You okay, Dad? Getting there, I said. You ready to go home? Yeah. But first, can we stop for ice cream? All this drama made me hungry. I laughed, despite everything. Sure, kiddo. Ice cream sounds perfect. The Sunset Pool Club's annual charity gala was the social event of the season, a black tie affair where the town's elite gathered to see and be seen while raising money for local causes. Jessica had been looking forward to it for months, buying a new dress and making dinner reservations at the country club's finest restaurant. Of course, that was before her world fell apart. I hadn't planned to attend. It wasn't really my scene even when Jessica and I were together, but when I heard through the grapevine that she was still planning to go, apparently hoping to salvage some of her social standing, I decided to make an appearance of my own. The event was held in the club's main ballroom, decorated with white linens and twinkling lights that made everything look like a fairy tale. Women in elegant gowns mingled with men in expensive tuxedos, sipping champagne and discussing their latest vacations to Europe. I arrived fashionably late, wearing the one good suit I owned and carrying a small duffel bag that I checked with the coat attendant. Several people did double takes when they saw me. Apparently word of recent events had spread through the social circuit. Jessica was holding court near the bar, wearing a stunning red dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She'd managed to gather a small group of sympathetic friends who were listening to her carefully edited version of recent events. Chad was notably absent. His social media empire had completely collapsed after our confrontation, and he'd apparently left town to focus on new opportunities in California. Leah was also missing, which wasn't surprising given that her role in the drama had become public knowledge. The art community was small and gossipy, and manipulating your best friend's relationship didn't play well with the creative crowd. I grabbed a beer from the bar and mingled, making small talk with people who seemed unsure whether to offer sympathy or congratulations. The general consensus seemed to be that Jessica had made a fool of herself, but there was still some residual sympathy for her as the wronged woman. That was about to change. Halfway through the evening, the club president took the stage to give his annual speech about community service and charitable giving. It was the usual boring stuff, delivered in the monotone voice of a man who'd clearly rather be playing golf. But then, something unexpected happened. The microphone cut out mid-sentence, and the president tapped it a few times before shrugging and walking off stage. Ladies and gentlemen, a familiar voice said over the sound system. Sorry for the interruption. My name is Danny Morrison, and I have a few things I'd like to share with you tonight. I'd slipped away during the president's speech and made my way to the sound booth, where a combination of Eddie's technical knowledge and a well-placed $20 bill had gotten me access to the microphone system. The crowd murmured in confusion as I walked onto the stage, but they were too polite to cause a scene. Jessica's face had gone white as a sheet. Many of you know me as the guy who owns Danny's Reliable Rides, I continued, enjoying the captive audience. Some of you might also know me as the man whose girlfriend very publicly cheated on him with a steroid-abusing Instagram influencer. The murmuring grew louder. This wasn't the kind of entertainment the gala committee had planned. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why am I bringing up personal drama at a charity event? Well, because I think it's important that you all know the truth about what happened, especially since some people have been spreading their own version of events. I gestured toward Jessica, who was frantically looking for an exit. See? My ex-girlfriend Jessica has been telling people that our relationship just fell apart naturally, that she made an innocent mistake, that I'm the bad guy for not forgiving her, but I have a different story to tell. The large screen behind me flickered to life. Another technical favor from Eddie, who'd helped me prepare a presentation that would have made any corporate executive proud. The first slide showed text messages between Jessica and Chad, discussing their affair and mocking my appearance and financial situation. The crowd gasped as they read Jessica's cruel comments about my body and her plans to upgrade to someone more impressive. These messages go back 3 months, I explained conversationally. 3 months of lying, cheating, and planning to leave me for someone with better abs and a fancier car. The next slide showed photos from Chad's social media, including the yacht pictures with his Miami girlfriend and screenshots of his posts about steroid cycles on bodybuilding forums. This is the man Jessica threw away our 2-year relationship for. A broke, drug-using serial cheater who couldn't even afford his own car payments? Jessica finally found her voice. Danny, stop this. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? I asked, advancing to the next slide. Or am I embarrassing the woman who cheated on me and then tried to make me look like the villain when I found out? The new slide showed text messages between Jessica and Leah, revealing the extent of Leah's manipulation and Jessica's willing participation in the deception. It turns out this wasn't just a simple affair, I continued. This was an elaborate revenge plot orchestrated by Jessica's best friend, who wanted to get back at me for firing her 3 years ago for stealing from my business. The crowd was completely silent now, transfixed by the unfolding drama. Several people were recording with their phones. This was going to be all over social media within hours. But here's my favorite part, I said, clicking to the final slide. Jessica's boss is here tonight. Mr. Reynolds, could you raise your hand? A distinguished man in the back of the room reluctantly raised his hand, looking deeply uncomfortable. Mr. Reynolds, you might be interested to know that Jessica used company time and resources to carry on her affair. She also discussed selling stolen property, my business assets, to fund a vacation with her boyfriend. I have documentation if you'd like to see it. Mr. Reynolds' face was grim. Jessica's career was clearly over. I walked to the edge of the stage and looked directly at Jessica, who was now crying openly. You wanted to humiliate me publicly, sweetheart. You wanted to make me look like a fool in front of the whole town. Well, congratulations, you succeeded. But you forgot one important thing. I paused for dramatic effect, enjoying the moment. I'm really good at learning from my mistakes. With that, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the engagement ring I'd bought for her months ago. The same ring I'd left on the table at Murphy's Tavern, which she'd apparently returned to the jewelry store for cash. This was going to be your engagement ring, I announced to the crowd. I was planning to propose at the pool club barbecue, right before you started gushing about your ex-boyfriend's body to anyone who'd listen. I held the ring up so everyone could see it, then walked over to the decorative fountain that served as the ballroom's centerpiece. But since you preferred Instagram abs to genuine love, I think this belongs somewhere more appropriate. I tossed the ring into the fountain with a satisfying splash. The crowd erupted in shocked gasps and excited chatter. Jessica pushed through the crowd toward me, mascara streaming down her face. Danny, how could you do this to me? Do this to you? I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Jessica, you did this to yourself. I just made sure everyone knew the truth. You've ruined my life. No, sweetheart, you ruined your own life. I just gave it the audience you seem to want. Security was finally moving toward the stage, but I was already walking away. I'd said everything I needed to say, and the video evidence would speak for itself on social media. As I reached the exit, I turned back for one final look at the chaos I'd created. Jessica was sobbing in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by former friends who were backing away like she had a contagious disease. Mr. Reynolds was on his phone, probably calling HR. The club president was frantically trying to restore order to his charity gala. And me? I walked out into the cool night air, climbed into my pickup truck, and drove home to my daughter, who was waiting with pizza and a movie queued up on Netflix. How'd it go, Dad? She asked as I changed out of my suit. Better than expected, I said. Much better. The next morning, my phone was buzzing with calls from reporters, friends, and even a few potential customers who'd seen the gala footage online. Apparently, there was something appealing about a guy who fought back against public humiliation with style and evidence. Jessica's social media accounts had been deleted. Chad's Instagram was permanently suspended. Leah's art studio had a for rent sign in the window. As for me, I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise and planning my next move. The used car business was booming. Turns out people liked buying from someone who didn't take crap from anyone. My phone rang. It was Eddie from the gym. Saw the video, he said without preamble. Nice work. Very professional. Thanks. I had a good teacher. You free for lunch today? I've got someone I want you to meet. She's a divorce attorney, just moved to town from Chicago. Tough as nails, smart as a whip, and she thinks your gala speech was the funniest thing she's seen all year. I smiled, feeling something like hope for the first time in months. Set it up, Eddie. I'm ready for whatever comes next. They called me the villain. Turns out I wore it better than they wore their masks.